Absolutely. It's life-changing in so many different ways that we would just take for granted. So it's amazing waking up the next morning, realizing there's 100 or 200 families that today have access to electricity that didn't yesterday. And then that's what we've been able to do in the last 24 hours. So it's life-changing for them, and certainly for me as well.
Hello and welcome to Say Hi to the Future, a podcast aimed at highlighting the human side of human ingenuity, clever, inventive, and original thinking. My name is Ken Tenser, CEO of SpyderWorks. With me today are Andy Keith and Brett Bergmann. They've joined us to tell us about their company, Solar Panda, an innovative company providing home solar systems to rural African communities who don't have access to electricity. Like this video if you enjoy our show and subscribe to the channel. Leave us a comment with who we should interview next. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Andy and Brett, welcome to Say Hi to the Future.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, great to be here.
So what's a solar panda?
What is a solar panda?
What's a solar panda? It's a great name. What's behind?
Yeah, there's kind of I'll say what we do first, and then I'll give the background on how we came up with the name, because it's kind of a funny story. So we provide kind of off-grid solar. Our first market is Kenya. So essentially there's 1 billion people in the world still today in 2022 that don't have access to electricity, which is something we take for granted here. I've been in the solar industry for quite a while, and I was at a conference where I came across, there was a panel on off-grid solar, and it immediately kind of spoke to me. I was like, wow, that's crazy that there's 1 billion people in the world without access to electricity, and also a huge business opportunity, because I knew with the falling cost of solar and batteries that it would make complete sense that a lot of people would kind of leapfrog the last technology and be connected off-grid. So that's really what we do. We ultimately decided to start in Kenya, and we've grown quickly there. But yeah, to come back to your first question on why the name. So we wanted a name that worked in English and Swahili, and kind of quickly realized that was an impossible task. I wanted it to be solar something. So we were trying like solar this, solar that. And one night with some friends, we were playing euchre, the card game, and had a couple drinks, and there was pandas the giant pandas on the backs of these cards. And someone was like, well, how about Solar Panda? And everyone laughed. And I was like, I kind of actually like that name. And then I messaged my friend who grew up in Nairobi in Kenya. And so like, what do you think of this name? He's like, oh, well, you finally found a name that works in both languages. I was like, oh, really? Like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, that means like to climb and do well. So I was like, oh, that's perfect. It's a cute animal we can do some fun marketing stuff with. So
very cool. Nothing like cards and a few drinks, I guess, to launch a business. That's great.
Exactly.
So, Brett, how did you come into Solar Panda, and have you known Andy for long? Or
Yeah, complete nepotism. It's actually really funny. I've known Andy since we were in like preschool. I'm a couple years older than Andy. I was friends with his sister. We went to school together. Fell out of touch. I hadn't talked to Andy or his sister for, 15 years, but our mothers kept in touch. And I'd gone the road of, I'd done some startup stuff on my own, but large CPG companies and doing marketing. And I wanted to get back into doing something more entrepreneurial. I was getting a little frustrated at working for a big company. And at the same time, Andy had launched Solar Panda, and it was kind of just in the early stages and taking off. And so he needed help. I knew what he was doing just from talking to my mom, and it sounded really interesting. And one day I came home frustrated from work, and I called my mom, like, can you put me in touch with Andy? And oddly, so he got an email from, I think, his mom saying, you should talk to Brett. And the same day he was really busy. He was talking to his sister, who I've not talked to in 15 years, who said, you should look for someone like Brett. And anyway, so we got in touch and tried to meet in an airport one day, and didn't work. Had a quick phone call, met for lunch. He told me all about it, and I was like, wow, this I had 3 children. The idea of leaving like a big stable company to go join a startup was daunting, to say the least. But he explained the vision and what they'd done, and I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to really make an impact on the world and join an extremely exciting Canadian company. So I think we had lunch. By the end of that, I went home, and 2 days later, I was like, yep, I'm in. So that's it was kind of fortuitous that our paths crossed again, and I haven't. It's been the best thing I've ever done in my life, other than family stuff.
Well, we'll give you a mulligan on that. That's great. That's a great origin story, and I'm just laughing because everybody loves great entrepreneurial origin stories, and sometimes they're pretty basic. They're fortuitous, and we just sort of recognize an opportunity and go for it in the most, I don't know, unexpected moments. So, Brett or Andy, sorry, Kenya. I mean, we're all sitting here in Canada, actually, in Toronto or around. How did Solar Panda start in Kenya?
Yeah, so as I was mentioning before, I actually did solar in Canada for a while. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Green Energy Act that came out in Ontario in 2009. I was 23 at the time, actually, and I was pretty fresh out of university. I actually, it was during the financial crisis, so January 2009, and I got let go. I was the most junior employee at this renewable energy company. And I figured it was a great time to try and start a company within renewable energy, because it was really coming out of nowhere in Ontario. And so I started a couple of companies around that time and did pretty well from that. And so sold the second one in 2014. And then, as I mentioned, I was at this conference in kind of early 2016. And I was really trying to figure out kind of what I wanted to do next. It just made a lot of sense to me. I'd also spent a bit of time in Ghana previously, and that really changed my perspective on Africa. I mean, not that many Canadians have been to Africa, and it's obviously just pretty far away from Canada, but that certainly kind of opened my eyes a little bit and changed my perspective. And one of the things that really changed was I was like, Africa really needs investment in jobs. It doesn't kind of need like aid and volunteers. And that really changed me at the time. I think I was like 20 at that time when I was there, but it certainly changed my perspective. And, there wasn't much I could do with that information when I was 20. I'd kind of taken a gap year in university, but fast forward many years later, and I was like, oh, wow, this is a great opportunity to engage with Africa. And kind of from a business perspective, create investment in jobs, and there's a huge market for this. Why Kenya? We actually visited a couple of countries to pick which one. We ended up choosing Kenya because there was already a bit of a market there for this, and so we were coming in a bit later than the earlier players in the sector. And I figured, we'd be able to learn quickly there because customers already knew what it was. We were designing our own product and our own software, so wanted to figure out like, okay, have we done something good here? Will we be competitive with companies that are already doing this? They've also got really good mobile money there, so it's really easy to essentially like text money back and forth. And so our business is entirely cashless, which is really nice. So that helps, and they've got a pretty good regulatory framework. I think, to be honest, I was a bit hesitant or scared of doing business in Africa. I think it's probably a lot of Canadians would be. Will it be difficult to do business there? Will people try to bribe you? That sort of stuff. That honestly hasn't really happened. It's been much more seamless than, frankly, like I would have expected. They've got a pretty good regulatory framework there, and yeah, it's been I mean, you'd think like a lot of people are like, oh, so you live in Kenya, or you go there once a month. But yeah, I mean, these days what you can do remotely, and obviously we've got a huge and strong team on the ground, but it's pretty incredible what you can do remotely these days. And so yeah, it's been a great place to do business, actually.
Cool. So Brett, tell us a little bit about the technology and the application itself. I mean, my understanding is you're bringing solar to, again, you mentioned up front that you're bringing to solar solar energy or electricity through solar energy to people or communities who don't have access. How do you actually do that? What is the technology?
So the product, actually, I will. So what they buy is a kit, and it comes with a solar panel that they put on top of their home. And a lot of these homes are quite small compared to what we have here. And so they get a panel that goes on the roof. It connects to a battery pack, and the control unit looks like this. And then depending on the kit they get, it comes with different accessories. So it might come with, say, our home kit, which is kind of our middle kit, comes with 4 bulbs that they'll put up around their home. It comes with a radio for entertainment and education. It comes with a flashlight, a lantern, so they can do, it might be farming, navigating around the house. And then it comes with a charging cable for their phone and all the accessories, because despite the fact they don't have electricity, everyone has a phone. It's amazing how they've kind of jumped ahead of us there. The system that's the system they get, and they can get a smaller one that has just 2 bulbs and less accessories, up to an upgradable one where it comes with a 32-inch TV and more bulbs. And so that's the basic hardware. And the way it works is that it's a pay-as-you-go system. So to pay for this upfront would be unreachable for the vast majority of the customers. For our home kit, for example, they pay about a $20 deposit on the day of purchase, and then about 50 cents a day for the next year or so, a little bit more. And the way they do that, they send the payment to us through that mobile money that Andy mentioned. They get back a token that they punch into the keypad that unlocks the unit for the next 24 hours. And so if they miss a day, if they don't pay, it just doesn't work. But once they've fully paid off that loan, then they get a final token that unlocks it, and they've got free electricity for however long they use it for. And then the idea is that we keep adding on products that, okay, you start with a starter kit, and then you're going to move up to another kit later, and then you're going to get a TV. And as you grow and no longer have to pay for kerosene, and you can use it for all these other things, you can upgrade your life. So that's basically how the technology works.
So Andy, Brett was mentioning kerosene. I mean, it seems that this is a little bit more than just about electricity or energy. There's some safety to it as well. Maybe you can tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, kerosene is a pretty terrible technology. So I mean, I don't think anyone in the world who's using kerosene probably wants to be using kerosene. So I mean, I think the sooner we can get rid of that, the better. It's really toxic. So having kerosene in the home is equivalent of smoking about 2 packs of cigarettes a day, which disproportionately affects women and children who spend more time in the home. It's also a huge source of fires in the home, as well as burns. I think it's like the #1 cause of injury with children. So it's a terrible technology that the sooner we can eliminate it, the better.
So the other thing that Andy, that was mentioned, light bulbs and whatnot. Again, let me be an ignorant Canadian for a second. I'm not saying Canadians are ignorant. I'll just say that I am. I've traveled a lot in my life, not, as you said, to Africa. Is this life-changing? Is this a nice to have? Where does electricity and light bulbs fall in that sort of scale, do you think?
Yeah, I would describe it as life-changing for sure. Yeah, I mean, our customers are super appreciative of what we're doing. Like, we'll often, either visiting customers or just in the photos because we're not, Brett and I aren't there all the time, but the photos and videos that we get back from the team on the ground, like sometimes customers will sing songs about Solar Panda, or like, I remember, Brett's got a cool story of him visiting a customer, but yeah, it's I mean, it's pretty life-changing for sure. Yeah, to be able to have light, it's kids can study in the evening. It's just, I mean, imagine all of a sudden that our lights here weren't going to work anymore. I mean, people would be pretty upset and then pretty happy when they came back. So and for some of these homes that are on kerosene, I mean, they've literally never had electricity before. So yeah, it's a game changer for sure.
If I can the story Andy was mentioning. So the first time just after a couple months after I joined, I had never been to Africa before, quite ignorant about this, and kind of took for granted the electricity we have and what that allows. So I went over and I spent a bunch of time. I visited our shops, but I spent a couple days and went out to visit the homes of our customers. And it was a first day. It was a super long day. Visited about 12 homes, and sometimes we're walking like a kilometer through fields to get to this one home. And I remember being in one home and going in, and I had someone who was helping interpret. And I went there with all these questions about like, well, do you like the torch better than the lantern? What would you like to see? Like all these very technical, consumer insight driven questions. And this one dad who had 3 little children around, he just came up and hugged me. And he said, thank you for helping me get rid of kerosene so I don't have to listen to my children coughing anymore. And I'm choking up just saying it now. And after, I don't know, super long day, I went back to the hotel that night and I called my wife in Toronto and I was crying. I said, I can't believe this is what I get to do as my job. And so absolutely, it's life-changing in so many different ways that we would just take for granted. So it's amazing waking up the next morning, realizing there's 100 or 200 families that today have access to electricity that didn't yesterday. And then that's what we've been able to do in the last 24 hours. So it's life-changing for them and certainly for me as well.
No, that's a great story. And thank you for sharing that. And it's nice to be passionate about what we do. I know that I've gone through different entrepreneurial iterations in my life, and having the passion is certainly a great precursor to success. So, Andy, how scalable is this? And not just in terms of Africa, but I mean, there's a lot of remote places in Canada that are very cold where our lights go out quite often. So, and I'm not just talking about Canada, but there's a lot of remote places in the world where, continuous electricity is not a given.
Yeah. So, and just to give some sense of the scale, so we're powering almost 200,000 homes within Kenya. We have 40 stores across Kenya, and then most of our sales are made through sales agents who kind of work out of those stores. So we have close to 1,000 sales agents and about 270 employees. So it's a decent. We've grown fairly quickly in the last 4 years since we launched. So certainly we want to expand into other countries. I think I'd say within 3 to 5 years, I hope we're in 3 to 5 countries, I would say. I think once we've really tried to focus on nailing this down really well in Kenya first, and just making sure all of our processes, equipment, software, everything's quite tight. And then we want to replicate it into other countries. I think we'll probably start with countries within Africa. There are some countries maybe in Central or South America or in Asia that have a decently sized off-grid population as well. And I know, certainly I know we have some kind of diesel generation in northern Canada, which frankly, solar is not super well suited to northern Canada, just because, not much sun in the winter. So it's kind of like, it would be kind of like a half the year solution. But it's very well suited to Africa, obviously, where it's very sunny. So I think we'll probably continue to focus on Africa, at least for the next few years. But who knows beyond that?
And Brett, what's the limiting factor, if there is one? I mean, is it the ability to store electricity?
The limiting factor in Canada or?
No, I'd say even in Africa. I mean, in terms of how many light bulbs, how many houses, how many, how large can it scale? Is it the ability to store electricity or to capture it, or?
Yeah, it's largely the size of the battery that dictates that. So, and the size of the panel as well to charge that batteries. And I mean, the limiting factor there is not really size, but just cost. So we agonize over every penny that goes into the product to make it as affordable for these customers as possible. So a starter kit has a smaller battery, which makes up a big chunk of the total kit cost. a TV premium package that has to power a TV and the lights, has a bigger battery, and a big factor in people deciding which product to choose. Solar Panda versus another one is what they refer to as the runtime. So how long will the lights last on high setting on one charge or in a day, or how long can I watch my TV for? And so we've kept kind of how do we cut unnecessary costs out so that we can put it back into the battery, into those things, so that they can kind of keep doing that, and how do we drive efficiency? So that's the biggest factors.
I'd say that's kind of like zooming out of what we're specifically doing, but just kind of talking about solar energy in general. I think that's a question that I get a lot. It's like, oh, well, what's the ultimate scalability here? I would just say to that, I mean, there's no limit to the amount of solar or storage that we could add. I mean, increasingly, I think even in countries like Canada or North America or Europe, we're going to see increasing amounts of renewable energy. And it's kind of something I like to point out to people all the time, is that it can be reliable. Like if you keep adding more solar and storage, you can power all of the United States, or you can power all of whatever you're trying to power. It's just there's no technical limit to that. It's just a question of scale. That's kind of on the utility side. On the off-grid side as well, I mean, another way you could think about it is that we're essentially like a residential solar company that operates in Africa. It's a little bit different because we also pair it with the appliances. So if you think about a residential solar company in, let's say, Canada or the USA, they're typically just providing electricity, and everyone at home already has all the appliances that they want. In this case, if we just sold like a solar system, people would be like, okay, that's interesting, but I don't necessarily have the appliances, or they're not at my local store because my neighbor also doesn't have electricity. So why would the local store carry it? So it just makes sense to pair it together as a very tight ecosystem. So we happen to provide the power as well as the electricity. But again, kind of just stepping back for a second, I think, even in countries that have existing electrical grids, I think in the coming years, as the price of solar panels and batteries continue to fall, and I think a lot of people don't realize how quickly they are falling. Like the price of solar panels and batteries has fallen by 90% in the last 10 years, and it's continuing to fall. And it's getting pretty close to the point where, customers will actually be able to save money by going off grid. And that's going to be like a that's a paradigm shift that I think a lot of people just aren't quite aware that's coming, and the huge ramifications that's going to have. Just on the grid continuing to operate, or if people are leaving the grid, okay, well, now do we have to increase the price of electricity for everyone who's still on the grid? And then that kind of drives more people to go to off grid. That'll be less relevant here in Canada because, again, the solar is not as reliable in the winter. But in countries that are quite sunny and have high electricity prices, that's going to start happening a lot sooner than people think. So if you think of California or Hawaii, that's coming this decade, and it's going to be a big deal that I think a lot of people don't quite appreciate yet.
And what is the end use of the panel or the battery? I mean, I don't know what the life expectancy of the equipment is, but is that in itself, is it recyclable, or what happens at the end of their life?
Yeah, e-waste. I mean, e-waste is a problem everywhere in the world. It's especially a problem in places like Africa that have unfortunately become a bit of a dumping ground for the more developed countries and don't have all the infrastructure that we do here. So it's something, I mean, I think we're many different types of companies, but one of them certainly is a green company. So both with renewable energy, we want to lead in this industry in how we deal with that. So there's a few things that we've done over the last couple of years, and there's a lot more we can do. So, I mean, we eliminated plastic from our packaging. We found certified e-waste recyclers. So we pay to ship any products that we bring in from warranty claims or get turned in by customers. We send to them for responsible disposal. But what I'm most excited about is over the last year, we've established a very significant refurbishment facility. So this was brand new to us. We've got a big space. We've got a team. that are now taking all those products that we used to have to recycle, although we kind of put a lot of them in a corner because we knew this was going to come, and we can now repair them, get them back out into the field, and kind of repeat that cycle. And I mean, that has cost benefits for us, for the customer, but it's also great for the environment. But there's a lot more I think we can do and that this industry can do. And we're working with some Canadian student groups now, university student groups now, to come up with what other solutions can we have for repurposing this. So do we go something like the beer store here, where there's a deposit on the product? Do you give discounts if somebody turns in an old product and buys a new one? So we're exploring all of those things, because I think there's a lot more that can be done. And I mean, we've become one of the leaders, if not the leader, in this industry from like a sales and pushing standpoint. And I think we can also become the leader in how do we think about e-waste and responsibility in that area. And maybe the solution just isn't just for Solar Panda customers. Maybe it's for everybody. Anybody can turn in their stuff to us, and we'll figure it out. So more to come, but it's definitely a progression, and it's definitely top of mind for us.
No, that's great. I really love this story today. And as we come close to the end of our time here, just again, we talk a lot about passion, curiosity, audacity, and again, a lot of people think of audacity as a negative. I think it's necessary as an entrepreneur. I think that when you start your business, you look left and right, and people are always telling you why it can't work, why it won't work. Andy, you're sitting in Toronto, you're changing the world, you're starting in Kenya. You must have had a whole bunch of "this is nuts" thrown at you, and still you're just plowing through. Just to leave us today with, how you overcame that and what pushed you through.
I mean, in the last couple of years, it's not just other people. I've been looking in the mirror and saying "this is nuts" quite a few times. The last couple of years has been, in particular, has been really challenging through the pandemic. For a few reasons. Supply chains have gotten messed up. Our manufacturing prices were up about 30% at one point. And at the same time, our market is Kenya, where there's not kind of the same, the government is not in a position to say, well, we're going to run huge deficits and have CERB and all this other stuff for everyone. So their economy is also, a decent part of their economy is tourism. So their economy has been crushed. There hasn't been kind of the government support there. So at the same time, our costs are going way up. Our customers' ability to pay has gone down. So it's been a very challenging and stressful couple of years for sure. We're starting to see a little bit of that turnaround now. Yeah, like sometimes in the last couple of years, I'm like, oh, if I could go back and start this again, like, would I? And some days are some days you're like, oh, I don't know. But then other days you're like, yeah, no, I definitely, even if I had to do it again, I'd do the same thing. In some ways, starting was actually, I'd say, less scary, because this is my third venture, and I'd done pretty well from the first couple. So it's kind of like, okay, well, I'll see how this goes. And if it doesn't work out, like, it's not the end of the world for me personally. When it ended up happening was that I was kind of became pot committed, where it was like, I had most of my money invested, and then the pandemic hit. So no investors wanted to step up and rescue us. So I was like, okay, well, I didn't need to let this fail or go all in and hope that this kind of works out. And so I ended up doing that. And so it's been pretty stressful, but I think we're actually hopefully just about to kind of close our Series A next month, I hope, actually. So I think we're going to make it through, and I think there's a very kind of bright future in the coming decade. I think solar is clearly just becoming more and more of the norm in the economic choice to make. So I think we've got a bright future ahead of us, but there's been a few dicey times for sure.
Nothing like a good gut check as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, for sure.
Andy, Brett, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.